Welcome to episode 4 of Brainrich podcast. I'm super excited to welcome our guest who's passionate about educating parents on how to teach your child survival swim. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Keryn van Kempen, the founder of the Water Baby Family. Keryn is a happy mom of 3 boys, ages 8, 5, and 2, and she lives in Australia. Keryn, we're super excited to welcome you to our podcast. I'm excited to be here. Keryn, why is it so important for parents to teach their kids survival swimming specifically, not just to swim? What is it all about? Can you tell us?
Survival swimming is the ability for a child to save themselves if they fall in water. They can save themselves by rolling into a float position when they fall in. So children are naturally buoyant very young, and all they need to learn is to lift their chin up out of water, and then they're able to breathe. So in that float position, they're able to breathe easily, rest, and call out for help without using much energy at all. So they can stay in that position for quite a while. So dangerous for a child that's under 4, especially, to learn the bobbing technique. Will learn to swim more of the competitive swimming strokes and try to bob their head up to get a breath. So this is something that's taught in traditional swim lessons compared to survival swimming. Is traditional swim lessons will teach that bobbing. So it'll be where they lift their head up, and but by doing that, they get a very small window of actually getting a breath. It's actually a whole nother skill to try and get that breath at the right time as their head comes out of the water. But the weight that they've just lifted up and push them back under. So it takes a great deal of effort to get them up out of that water. And then it's just going to push them straight back under. While if they turn and float, simply they're already in a horizontal position. They just have to turn their head and it just puts them into a float position. So it's super easy. And then they can rest as long as they want. They can breathe lots. They can talk if they want to. They can call out for help if they want to, if that's the situation. But in that position, they can rest and they can have as much breath as they want and not have to use any energy. So that's why it's such an incredibly important skill for them to learn.
Swimming is so beneficial. What would be your suggestions how to introduce newborns or toddlers to the water so they're not afraid? And
Great
what age
question.
do you
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, awesome. You can start at 2 weeks of age and in the bath time. So going in the water and getting in the water with them, holding them if you'd like to, and teaching them to be okay with water on their head is one of the first steps. One of the ways that you can begin is by teaching them a little bit of water running, trickling down their face. Using verbal cues helps a child very quickly learn what's about to happen. So they're more prepared. And using the ability to watch their breath, it makes it a little bit easier to time it correctly. So that way your child will be having a full breath in and won't be able to breathe in any more water just because they've got full lungs, so they can't take in any more. That way you can actually teach them in a more safe and comfortable environment.
For newborns, since they have this inborn reflex where you blow a little bit air into their nose, they kind of hold their breath, and that's when you dive into the water. Is that true?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so up until 6 months old, that is something that some swim instructors do to submerge a child, but it really dissipates at about 6 months old. So we don't use that. We use verbal cues instead because in the bath as well, we're mainly doing cup submersions. It's not a necessary technique to use. If you want to, you can try it, but it's just not something that long term is going to be beneficial because you want to teach them the verbal cues and then later on the physical cues. So we're going to go ready, set, go. So they learn that little release. So you're still holding them with this part of your hand, right? Holding them up, not totally letting go, but just holding them with this. And then you're going to go ready, set, go, and dip them under. So holding them in a horizontal position when you do full submersions. Yep.
So verbal cues versus just kind of relying on the blow and child holding its own breath.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah. Yeah. It is something, if you wanted to do it, you can try it, but a much better way to do it is through verbal cues. Waiting for that full breath in is really important as well. What's great about cup submersions is that they're very forgiving. So if you're not quite confident at the beginning, but you want to do it really safely, cup submersions are really great because the water will trickle down their face. Even if you didn't get your timing quite correctly, they're very unlikely to breathe it in. It's a really great way to start.
I have a friend and her baby, she's just not liking the water. She never
Yeah.
liked bath time. She never likes to go in the swimming pool. You kind of have to
Okay.
force her to push her to go to the pool.
I think most children will find that water is out of their comfort zone in the beginning. Go to easier the earlier you begin. So starting when they're 3 months old is going to be easier than starting at 1 year old. And then starting at one is going to be easier than three. But it's not impossible. If you have a 3 year old and hasn't learned, you can teach them. It's just you may have to undo bad habits they might have learned or just work them through some fears that they've developed. But it is possible. Children, even if they're very fearful, they can do it. So it is easier and more beneficial to start as early as you can. With a child that is fearful in the water, understand what we call the Goldilocks zone. It's with each of us, we have a comfort zone that we know and we're comfortable with. And then from that, we need to grow. But if the child is screaming and is really upset, it's because they've been pushed too far out of that comfort zone. The Goldilocks zone is right on the edge of that comfort zone. You, as a parent, excel in this because you know them really well and you know if they can take on that challenge or not. But you want to take on that challenge just on the outside of their comfort zone. So that way they can grow, still feel a little uncomfortable, but it is still growing them. And if you're consistent with your lessons as well, it will quickly grow them out of that comfort zone into a new comfort zone. So that's what we work on, especially in bath time, is just concentrating on that comfort zone, being the Goldilocks zone, to be working to help them grow. The other thing with children that are fearful of water, it's often caused from puddle jumpers, floaties, and the wings and things like that. So these things teach a child to not put their head underwater. Every time they jump into water, they're expecting that their head will stay out of water. But they're really dangerous habits as well. So these are things like swimming vertically. So when we are on land, we want to be vertical, but when we're in water, we want to be horizontal. It's always horizontal. So that's one thing that we want to teach whenever we're doing submersions and stuff, is to get their body into a horizontal position before we submerge and keeping them in that position. So they learn this vertical position, but it's also called a drowning position because this is the position that most people that are drowning are in because they try and bicycle ride or to climb a ladder. That's what they look like when they're trying to get up to the top and get their head out of water. So there's so many things I could share, but with a child particularly, it's a really extremely dangerous position because their head is such a large portion of their weight. So being ratio wise, that's why they float so extremely well because of their ratio. But if they're in this position, it's what's going to push them back under.
For our listeners, Keryn has two amazing programs. It's a really, really good way to start with your baby in the bathtub or at the comfort of your own pool if you have it. Please check it out, thewaterbabyfamily.com, and learn more about it. Keryn, let's continue with our podcast. And another question that I have for you: is it difficult for a parent who is not a swimmer but really wants to introduce her child to swim? Is it possible for them to teach their kid?
Such a good question. Thank you for asking. It's one of the main things that would be a contraindication to teaching your own child. You need to be able to swim yourself. You wouldn't be able to take your own child in the water if you don't have any confidence in the water yourself. It's a really dangerous environment that you're taking your child into. So you want to be able to have the confidence and skills to know what to do if you lose footing or if your child has moved further away from you to get into the deep end or any of those sort of things. So it's really important that you know how to swim yourself. You don't need to be an Olympian. You don't need to be Michael Phelps or anyone like that, but you do need the basic swim skills to be able to do it yourself. It is quite shocking how many adults don't know how to swim and have missed that during their childhood. It's such an important skill. It's not just an extracurricular activity. It is a life saving everyone ought to learn. So it's really wonderful that adults go learn. It is something you can totally do even as adults. We've had 70-year-olds come and learn how to swim. So go to your local swim school and ask for a professional swim instructor to teach you. Always get in the water with a professional. Don't go in the water yourself if you don't know how to swim. You can absolutely do it whatever your age. And yeah, for those that want to have their child learn swimming, ask a parent, ask another parent or another caretaker to do it themselves.
Awesome. And for someone who is feeling not comfortable in the water, they could also project that fear into their kids too, right? Just because you as a
Oh,
parent
so
have a
yeah,
fear of water doesn't mean that your child cannot learn and enjoy the water, right? Kids, they like sponges. They observe everything that you do. If you
mm,
come to the water and you constantly anxious, it's like, don't do this, don't do that. Kids will pick that up and they will kind of without them knowing, they will be also cautious and they would not know why. And it's such a
yeah,
vital and important skill. How many cases of drowning? in the world every day someone is drowning. And that skill that could be learned, doesn't matter what age, right?
Yeah, and you shared several different levels there as well. Someone could be, as we've mentioned, totally a non-swimmer themselves, so have their own fears because they can't swim. There's also those that are swimmers themselves but have had a traumatic experience, and so are going to project that onto their child. But then there's those that are good swimmers, but just because they're a parent and they've got that anxiety of their child being around water, they could have the best of intentions, but can also project many fears onto their child as well. A child can learn those important skill that could save them, but also learn the healthy fear that we ought to have. It's a healthy respect, you could really say, for water, but know what to do if the situation occurs that they fall in water without help present. And I would say we can all project many fears onto our children because the world is a dangerous place. And so I totally respect that I'm the mum that is constantly pointing out things to my boys, this and this and this. But it's also just that teaching them to be of the danger around them. It is important to do that, but to point that out to a child and to share that. But it's also very different to verbally saying it to actually showing them what to do in that danger. So, if a snake appears, like for us living in Australia, it's just one of those things. But if a snake appears, this is what we do. So it's not just verbally saying it, it's showing them, okay, everyone, let's pretend that's a snake. Let's move back. Like, this is what we do. We don't go near it. We do all this sort of stuff. So you can't just verbally tell a child, this is what you do in an emergency. We need to practice. It's not like, oh, we call triple O. The child needs to learn how to do that, how to physically do that. So yeah, it's many different things I could go into all that we have to be aware of, not to teach a child to fear the water, but to teach them to respect it.
That's a great point. I have 3 kids, and with my oldest daughter, I experienced few things. I signed her up for traditional swim classes, never found anything on survival swim classes, just more traditional classes. And then what happened is on the traditional classes, the idea behind it to me, at least in my view, was to kind of make kids comfortable in the water so they can float a little bit, blow some bubbles, and 30 minutes one time a week. I didn't really feel like my daughter was learning something from your experience. And I'm sure you have parents coming from all stages at their kids' swimming journey. What would you say how traditional swim classes are different from survival swim lessons? And does it make difference the quantity of lessons? How many times a week kids are actually going into classes?
Definitely. Great point there. So, one of the differences between traditional swim lessons and survival swim lessons is how regularly we hold them. With survival swim lessons, we keep it to a few weeks. You can teach a child a great deal of skills by keeping it into only a few weeks rather than spreading it out over a whole year. So, what a child could learn in a whole year in traditional, they can learn in just a few weeks in survival swim lessons because we hold them so regularly. But the other difference is the activities that we hold. So, like you mentioned, you did traditional swim lessons. Your child didn't learn much, but as soon as they started in a different one with different technique, you were able to learn something within a month. And it really does make a difference. With traditional swim lessons, they often concentrate on competitive strokes or an introduction to that. Even if they're 2 years old, 3 years old, they'll use a lot of things like noodles and other flotation devices to try and help them learn the strokes of their arms and things like that. But what the difference is between that and survival swimming is teaches them independence and full independence. If they fell in water, they know what to do, not just, well, they have learned some competitive strokes so that when they get to the right age of about 4 or 5 years old, they can start applying them with breaths. But the biggest difference is that a child that is as young as 12 months old can learn how to save themselves if they fall in water. While in traditional swim lessons, they really just concentrate still on water familiarization and a little bit of lying on their back, perhaps, but no independence with that. And it is something that is, as we mentioned earlier, going to expand their comfort zone. But because we do it so regularly, it quickly grows. It's not as difficult as if you're doing it once a week because they're not starting from scratch again. And so as they continue to grow in their abilities on land, they will get better in their abilities in water, but it's not really at the level that they could be, which is at 12 months old learning to self rescue.
Swim classes. From my own experience, when my child went to take swim classes, kids, they have to get used to the instructor. They have to used to that person, which also takes time. And then as my daughter was going through those classes, the next day we came, they changed the instructor because either he's been sick or something. So it was another kind of learning curve for her. Oh, it's another person. I think what you try to teach and help parents to teach their own kids, that you know your own child, right? And you have that one-on-one connection, and child doesn't need to get to know you every time you see him in the water, right? So that's beautiful thing.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It really is. There's such a bond that parents have with a child. When you take a child into the water, they are willing to go into a new environment with you because they already have that trust. And otherwise, if you go with an instructor, they first have to build a bond between a parent and a child. There is such a bond already. So you're already 100 steps ahead. The greatest thing about a parent teaching their own child is that they it's easier for them to learn the tools to teach their own child than it is for a child to trust an instructor and go through that, because there are just so many tiers with that a child doesn't need to go through. It's one of the main reasons why a child cries in water in any swim lesson is because they're with a stranger. It's that separation anxiety that causes the greatest amount of tears. So if we can avoid that, we can avoid most of the tears. And that's why we believe parents make the greatest teachers, because they know them so well and they know what they're able to do. They know what they can learn to do, and they are also trusted most by their child.
It's such a great point. Such a great point. Karen, once the parents initially start this program, once the child knows how to rescue himself, how to float, if they learn it at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it's basically it stays with them for life, or there is a refresher course. You need to kind of brush up the skills.
Definitely. Thanks for asking. So, when a child learns and finishes the program and graduates as a ward, it is something that we do need to continue to do as maintenance and refresher. It's not something that once it's done, it's done. So, it is something that they will continue to have to practice as time goes on, but it won't have to be as regularly as the first initial program. So, once they learn that first program, if you don't do anything or winter, the next season, their body has changed, their head to body ratio has changed, so they will have to learn the skills again, but they won't be starting from day dot. They will be starting with just more of a refresher course that might only take a couple of weeks to get them back to where they were, but it will be something that is necessary each new season. And if possible, to continue with maintenance lesson every couple of weeks, you can.
Karen, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm eager to go and try it with my own kids. And guys, please check it out. It's thewaterbabyfamily.com. Please check it out, the ebook and course, and there is a bundle. You can get an ebook and the course together, and subscribe to Instagram page. Lots of insights there. Go to YouTube. And Karen, thank you so much for your time for interview today. Thank you.